Good evening. Welcome to the January 9th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you've joined us this evening on this snowy night. If you're at home watching, we're glad you joined us there as well. As is our custom, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Tully,
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Here. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. Chris, welcome back. Item 3 on our agenda tonight, we have a proclamation. As I've mentioned before, proclamations are an opportunity for the chair to say some things and try and encourage certain things or recognize other things. And we have a couple of them, one tonight, one we'll do a little later, that focus on civil rights. This happens to be our MLK Day proclamation. Whereas Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. devoted his life to advancing equity, social justice, and opportunity for all, while challenging all Americans to participate in reconciliation and the never-ending work of building a more perfect union. Whereas Dr. King emphasized that this dream excludes no one from its promise and protection, and that it affirms that every individual's rights are God-given and neither conferred by nor derived from the state. Whereas Dr. King recognized that everyone can be great because everyone can serve, requiring only grace and love to do so, and, during his lifetime, encouraged all Americans to serve their neighbors and their communities, remembering the urgency of now. Whereas Dr. King warned us to not satisfy our thirst for freedom by drinking from the cup of bitterness and hatred, that dignity, discipline, and nonviolence were the way forward, that we cannot walk alone in this walk to justice, and that we cannot turn back. Whereas in 1994, Congress initiated the King Day of Service, a nationwide effort to transform the holiday honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. into a day of community service, focused on Dr. King's example of working to solve social problems while focusing on bringing people together and breaking down the barriers that have divided us as a nation. Whereas serving on the King holiday is an appropriate way to honor Dr. King, meet local and national needs, bring our citizens together, and strengthen our communities and nation. And whereas the King Day of Service is the only federal holiday commemorated as a national day of service and offers an opportunity for Americans to give back to their communities on the holiday, as well as a time to make an ongoing commitment to service throughout the year. Whereas the King Day of Service projects are organized by a wide range of nonprofit and community organizations, educational institutions, public agencies, private businesses, and other organizations across the nation. Therefore, I, Robert T. Barnett, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, in honor and recognition of the contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to the advancement of equality in our country, proclaim January 15th, 2024 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the Village of Downers Grove, and urge our citizens to honor the memory of Dr. King, follow his example, and put his teachings into action by participating in the MLK Day of Service, and to find ways to give back to their communities through serve.illinois.gov, givingdupage.org, or AmeriCorps.gov, and by searching MLK Day of Service on the internet. Dated this 9th day of January, 2024, Downers Grove, Illinois. It's next Monday. Hope everybody gives that some thought. Item 4, minutes of previous council meetings.
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the January 2nd, 2024 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 5 on our agenda is the public comments portion of the meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where we take public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. So if you've got something you'd like to let us know about that is not on tonight's agenda, please come on down to the podium.
Hi, my name's Larissa Calvanese. I have to say I'm kind of curious about the Fairview focus. I live near Fairview and the track, so I'm curious to see what that is. And I have to say I'm sort of humbled to say I've lived here 40 years in Downers Grove, and this is only my second meeting. My first meeting was last week, and so I think that is a good thing, though, because I've always felt safe and I love my community. And in fact, when I moved into our house, we never locked our doors. I would move into, even my neighbors, they're like, we never lock our doors. And they had been there for, 50 years before me. And I just don't feel like I can do that anymore. And so I just want to thank Mayor Barnett for a couple weeks ago when I called you after the buses came in and asked, what is the plan? Did we know if they were called ahead of time? How can we know if everybody got on? And he mentioned there was no incidences, and we're just kind of going case by case. So, I appreciate that. But then I saw on the DuPage County, this is that Homeland Security report, that we actually had 8 buses. So I was a lot more surprised, and I don't know if that, and I guess I probably can't ask questions. I don't know if you, last time there was only a few people here, so I thought maybe that might be the case. But I don't know if you are able to know if there has still been no incidences. Have there been, did everybody get off the bus, get onto the train? Do we know that? And okay, well, I guess that's what I'm kind of wondering is how can we know when at some point the buses are coming and at night or it's too cold, and like how do you? I guess I'm just wondering, is there any talk amongst the village of resolution for hours for the buses or fines, or just how can we know when most likely we're not going to get the best situations again down the road? I mean, if there's still thousands of people coming up, and anyway, I guess I don't get to have any answers or anything, but I appreciate Mr. Barnett taking my call, and I'm just concerned that it's not going to end, I don't think, and I wondered if there's any talk of any resolution about how to protect the citizens or make us aware of how can I know what's going on, or what's the plan for the village should the situation worsen. That's all.
Good evening. Ed Brainer, long-time resident of Downers Grove. Tonight I'm asking the Downers Grove Village Council to pass an ordinance prohibiting buses dropping off unknown passengers, aka illegals, in Downers Grove. As the young lady just said, 8 buses so far that we know of. You do know who's getting off the buses. They're unvetted illegals, mostly men 20 to 30 years old. They'll sprinkle a family in there every now and then for photo ops. Are they sick? Are they violent criminals? Are they child sex offenders? Once off the buses, again, as the young lady said, are they all getting on the trains and going to Chicago? Or are a few just staying here in Downers? Mayor Barnett claims, hey, no problem here. I quote, "I do not believe there is any threat to the safety of DG residents, and I'm skeptical about the value of such an ordinance at this time." Well, Mr. Mayor, tonight we, the people of Downers Grove, want you to tell us how you know we're safe and that these unvetted illegals present no threat to us. How do you know? Last but not least, Mayor Barnett has also written, and I quote, "The safety of both residents and the bus passengers is our top concern." The safety of both residents and the bus passengers is our top concern. Let that sink in for a minute. We, the taxpayers, are no more important to the mayor than a bus full of unvetted illegals. That's pretty appalling. We demand that you tell the village why you think these illegals pose no threat to Downers residents and why you're skeptical of banning a bus ordinance. We're not skeptical. We can address this now, if you'd like, or in agenda item number 7, your mayor's report. We should also hear from David Fieldman, the village manager, and each of you council members as well on this matter. Thank you.
Hi. This is the reason I showed up, but I'm glad I did. I've been relocated down from about 12 years off and on. I was homeless. and the community welcomed me most of the time. Since I've been here, I had a little bit of windfall, free advertising for Peter and Ed Berdoliak. I finally got some money that's been coming to me. I talked to Dave. I'm trying to rent the Fairview train station. I've got enough to finance it, with no problem. I also got a couple partners coming. I want to explain something about people that are coming in Downers Grove. They've been coming in Downers Grove for now 9 years, from inner city Chicago, from far western suburbs as far as Montgomery. They've been coming all the way from central Illinois, okay? And some of them are totally illegal activities. And your law enforcement agencies are doing their best to fix it. But the only problem is the public is pretending it doesn't exist. There's a major problem in every community in the country. It's not Johnny does this, Johnny does that. Johnny is your kid next door. You ain't got to worry about the immigrants or the illegals. You got to worry about the kid next door. Is he being raised by the community? Is he getting the support by the community? Is he being schooled, fed, clothed, housed? Is his mental health being addressed? His or hers? Is mom got a problem? Is dad got a problem? I know for a fact, I know 3 young ladies in this town that are born and raised down in Grove. They come from very wealthy family, married into a wealthy family. They're in and out of drug rehabs. They haven't seen their kids. Their husband married somebody else. Or worse, their kids are dysfunctional, and the chain of dysfunctional progressively gets worse. That's it so all this stuff, immigrants, we got a strong community. We should support each other. America, the flag, here and here, it's everybody. It's every national country. Everybody in the world is here. I've been up here before. I've traveled all over Illinois, all over the United States. I run into people all the time, and you can check the videos of people saying, oh, my aunt lives in Downers Grove. My cousin lives in Downers Grove. My sister went to school there. Have a little pride in community. Support, reach out. Don't put up with a bunch of crap. You see something wrong, report it. Education. Be educated, don't be ignorant. Have a nice evening. God bless you.
Hello, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Paul Jarabik. I'm a Downers Grove resident, father, an Iraq war veteran, sitting member of the Human Services Commission here in Downers Grove, and most of all, concerned citizen. I'm here to represent some fellow citizens in regard to their and my concerns about the recent arrival of illegal immigrants on buses at Main Street Downers Grove train station. Some communities in the area have adopted ordinances to deter buses of illegal immigrants being dropped off in their towns. Few of our citizens have emailed the mayor expressing their desire for you to do the same. To one citizen, Mayor, you wrote, and I quote, "Every traveler who has arrived in Downers Grove has continued on." I would like to correct the record here. That statement is absolutely not true. There is no evidence to support that. I watched with my own eyes as 4 military-aged men did not get on a train to Chicago, but were picked up by a car with Florida license plates outside the Downers Grove Main Street train station. Furthermore, I have it on videotape if you'd like to see that. I was there for 2 immigrant bus load drop-offs, Mayor, and pardon me, but I did not see you there. I think the community deserves to know how you could make a claim regarding the safety of our community with zero evidence to corroborate it. You went on to say, and I quote, "Lastly, I do not believe there is any threat to the safety of Downers Grove residents businesses, or guests at this time. Now, given the information I've provided and witnessed, I would ask how you would know that. You don't even seem to be aware that all the immigrants who come here have not, quote, continued on, whatever that means. The other day, a junior high Boy Scout from Lyle asked the village council how they knew that all the immigrants are going to the city. It seems that even a 12-year-old has the common sense to understand that unvetted and unaccounted for illegal immigrants may not all be reaching their destination voluntarily. This is about safety. I was in the military. I fought in a combat zone in Iraq. Safety is about precaution. You mitigate risk through preparedness. You don't enact safety measures as a reaction. That's how people get hurt. For example, I'm sure your tune might change if you were related to Melissa Powell, a 46-year-old mother of 3 from Colorado, or her 16-year-old son, Riordan Powell, who were killed by an illegal immigrant drunk driving. He had recently been let out on bail after his 3rd drunk driving incident. We all know this could be possible in Illinois given the Safety Act. Our own federal government has admitted that known terrorists, human traffickers, fentanyl traffickers, cartel members, gang members, etc., have crossed our border. And we've done nothing to ensure their whereabouts or monitor their activity. The least Downers Grove could do is to enact an ordinance to prevent unknown illegals from being delivered to our town. I was in that train station. I saw the children that were my children's age. My heart broke for them. I know they are likely headed to places that are either unsafe or unprepared to care for them. And I've seen where they come from. I've observed firsthand children in a third world country. I know what it looks like to see children who don't have proper health care, sanitation, or education. We are extremely lucky to live in the United States where we are afforded these luxuries. But there's nothing pragmatic or compassionate about putting our own community in unnecessary danger, assuming everything will be okay and making assertions based on zero evidence. Mayor, there's one more statement you made to a citizen via email to which I take issue. You wrote, and I quote, "Fundamentally, the safety of both residents and the passengers of the buses is our top concern." Well, no, Mayor. Your top concern is the safety of Downers Grove citizens, not illegal immigrants to which you have no awareness for their background. I find it shocking that you would even make such a statement. And more importantly, that you seem to be unaware of your most important responsibility, that of the safety of your own citizens. We have an opportunity here. Making a difference starts with your own community. We can say no. We will not contribute to the inhumanity being perpetuated by our federal government. We will take care of our own community first. We will protect our community. We will take precautions to put our citizens first. Do the right thing. Stop making this political and make it about the safety of our community. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Village Council. I'm Laura Hoyce, Downers Grove resident since 1985. I'm going to try not to repeat those things that have already been said about the concerns related to the illegal immigrants getting off the buses and boarding the trains with their paid tickets to Chicago. This is a major issue for those of us that have lived here and are invested in Downers Grove and have families here that we are legitimately concerned about. Citizens in Downers Grove who are living under the radical leftist policies that are driven by the Biden administration and by Governor Pritzker in the state of Illinois now see our local government, the county and the village, obediently complying with those policies, despite the harm to the people that is occurring in all of our suburbs, not just Downers Grove. And so I'd like to step back for a moment and acknowledge that the village did not cause this. Those buses came from Texas. There's questions being raised as to whether an ordinance is a valid procedure. Some municipalities have already undertaken to pass an ordinance. Are they legitimate? Are they constitutional? We don't know the answer to that. But what we do know is the big picture here is that the Biden administration is in complete violation of our nation's laws, completely ignoring the immigration laws. They're violating our U.S. Constitution, the guarantee clause that's in Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution requires the federal government to protect every state in the nation from invasion. That's what this is. We have millions of people coming in here. 160 countries have been people from 160 countries, many of whom cannot speak English. And those who got off the buses in Downers Grove appeared to not be able to speak English, and their handlers told them not to tell anyone where they came from or where they're going. This is a secret, huge criminal operation that's driven by the Biden administration. The states have enumerated power to repel invasions. So it's arguable that Texas Governor Greg Abbott had a responsibility to just turn those illegal immigrants back to Mexico or wherever they were coming rather than send them up to Chicago. So our mayor of Chicago is rejecting them. So now the suburbs are being asked to comply, and the county is coordinating the efforts. And I learned that we've got a Department of Homeland Security right here in the county that's coordinating all this. So how much do we citizens know? Very little, so we need to find out more. We have a right to know what's going on. These are not asylum seekers. These are military-aged, 20 to 30-year-old men, many of whom from the last bus that came to Downers Grove are from Venezuela or Peru or other countries, completely non-English speaking. So those holding facilities, that processing center that's in Chicago, that is huge. I've seen whole city blocks devoted to the illegal immigrant effort. How do we know they're not going to come back to Downers Grove on their trains with a paid-for pass? I mean, the U.S. citizens are paying for all this. With federal taxpayer money, there's a similar operation in Maricopa County, Arizona, where James O'Keefe recently reported that $1.4 billion a year in 2021 alone went to an IRC, the International Relief Committee. Another $1.7 million paid to the U.S. government's Bureau of Population Refugees. $1.22 million from the Department of Health and Human Services. $114 million from humanitarian assistance. And the rest from the EU, European Union, and sources including Catholic charities and other private sources, all contributing to the effort of, oh, these poor people coming in, let's help them, let's donate. I was at the county board meeting today, and people were being urged to donate at various facilities. Look, these are military-aged men coming into our area. Yes, they're going on to Chicago, but what do they intend to do with them? We're paying for everything. Why? So what I'm saying is it's disturbing that the suburbs are being so obediently cooperating with this. Yes, I need to wrap it up. Thank you. So what you know, Mayor and Village Council, we have a right to know. We're citizens here. We're asking you to share this information and help us find solutions. It's the only way that I see that there's going to be a resolution is to shut down and stop people completely from coming across the border. And I know that's a bigger problem to deal with than what we've got here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Others?
Good evening. Eileen Breiner. I've lived here since 1982. I'll be very brief. To reiterate, the village, your number one priority should be the residents of Downers Grove. Am I correct? Am I correct? Your number one concern should be the citizens of Downers Grove. Am I correct?
Eileen, this isn't a theater. I understand your point. Everybody understands your point.
Okay.
This is also, Eileen, hang on.
wanted-
Stop for a second. If you've watched previous meetings, which I'm assuming you or perhaps another Briner has, you should be aware that this isn't a back and forth. This isn't a debate. This is an opportunity for residents to come tell us what's on their mind, which we're happy to hear.
Okay.
It's not theater and it's not a debate. Stick to it, please.
All right. I did want to get some response. I still have that question in my mind as to what everyone's answer to that question is. And that question looms even bigger now. Your number 2 concern should be for people visiting this town, coming here to do business. Their safety should be your second concern. Beyond that, these people coming on the train, the illegals, some of them have been seen, we have video, men with ankle monitors on. I don't think that this is a good character if he has an ankle monitor on. Do we really want them coming into our village? We've seen not everyone get on the train. Some of them get into cars. And where are they going? I know that an ordinance may not be able to do anything, but it sends a message that we do not want to be complicit in this human trafficking. And that's what this is, human trafficking. And by allowing those buses to drop their passengers off here, you're complicit in that human trafficking. And I don't want to see Downers Grove being part of that. Thank you.
Others? Anyone else? Subjects not on tonight's agenda. Okay, I'm going to take a minute. We're going to adjust our agenda just a little bit and move the mayor's report up front so I can say a few words. One of the great things about this country is that people have a lot of freedom of speech. And one of the things that means, unfortunately, is you can come to the microphone in any public meeting and say whatever it is you want, irrespective of your source or accuracy. So let's start with the folks that we're talking about getting off these buses. They are not illegal. As a matter of fact, according to Texas Governor Greg Abbott, these folks have already been through one round of Department of Homeland Security screening in Texas prior to getting on this bus. They are moving to another screening facility. Now, here's a little known fact. The minute you do that, dating back to 1980, so, let's maybe take a little of the Biden out of the conversation here. Dating back to 1980, perhaps some of you guys remember hockey players that would ditch Russia. When you become a person who has entered the process in the United States of seeking asylum, a couple of things. You are not required to stay in any one particular place. You are free to move around the country as you want. In fact, one of Texas Governor Abbott's purposes and points and frankly supports for his actions is that very fact. Otherwise, he would be trafficking. In fact, these people are following the law for seeking asylum in the United States of America. And they have the right to move around the country freely. The ankle bracelets, yeah, that's because they've already been through the process. They are part of the process of being monitored. I made the comment, everybody's moved on. I didn't make the comment, everybody's got on the train. And unfortunately, details matter. Details like the definition of an asylum seeker versus a refugee versus an illegal immigrant versus a criminal. Texas has also deported some 50,000 criminals. You know why they do that? Because they're actually going through background checks with each one of these folks. So maybe Governor Abbott is in cahoots with the Biden administration to facilitate a takeover of the United States. I'm a little skeptical of that. Way more likely is that these people have exactly done what it is they're supposed to do. Now, they may be denied asylum. That's entirely a possibility. Do you know what that process takes, ladies and gentlemen? Between 6 months and 2 years. So federal law, effective since 1980, has said that for any time in that period, while their application is pending, they are free to move the country. They are issued, in some cases, by the State Department, a right to work. They are not breaking the law. Getting off the bus in Downers Grove is not breaking the law, particularly when the state of Texas and Governor Abbott have said they have been through the first round of the process and are moving on. That's what's actually going on. Standing at the podium and calling it an invasion doesn't make it one. Standing at the podium and calling them all illegal does not make them that either. Your government, from Texas to Illinois to DuPage County to Downers Grove to Washington, D.C., is doing what they can within the confines of the existing law. Now, perhaps you believe that the 1980 Refugee Act should be changed. Fine. But it's not changed by creating a law locally that discriminates against a certain group of people because you think they might be somebody you heard about being from Peru. That's not the way we legislate, guys. When I say that the safety of our residents and visitors and businesses is paramount, I mean that. I don't put one above the other because we treat public safety of every person that's here the same way. Head shaking or not, still the truth. That's what we do. How do I know these people have moved on? That's not part of the meeting. You ready to leave? Well, stop. There is a process. You can follow the process just like everybody else can. We are all, every suburb across western suburbs certainly, and other places in the country, as we well know, this is, I think they're up to 400-some thousand folks that have been bused, is going through this same process. They are not all creating laws to identify a certain bus and try and somehow make that bus's activities in their community illegal. And we're not going to either. It's not, there's absolutely no reason to do that. How do I know they're all moving on? Well, I suppose you don't, but given the fact that they have a federally protected right to free movement throughout the country, in one way, you could also say that's none of our business. I don't even know where to start. There were so many things. Speaking English has never, ever been a qualification or requirement for being in this country legally. Think about that for a minute. Are you suggesting that any one of us up here, or most likely your relatives, should not have been here because they couldn't speak English? Listen to yourself. That is, they don't even know how to process that. I suspect that every person in this room has a relative who came to this country that couldn't speak English, or did it very poorly at the very least. Maybe there's a couple that don't, but I bet most of them do. I don't even know where to start with this stuff, guys. The fundamental starting point for all this is the people that we are talking about on those buses, getting off those buses in our community and taking the train, or getting a ride from a friend, yeah, or a local connection, you bet, are here legally, and they have a fundamental constitutionally protected right to travel the United States. That's the fact. You don't have to like it, it's fine, but don't take it up as though we have to create some law to discriminate against a certain bus type in order to adequately protect the residents of Downers Grove. That's BS. That's just BS. That's enough for now. I'll welcome any questions later, one-on-one further. Obviously, as you well know, I'm happy to respond to such questions in writing as well, which I'll continue to do. But for now, we're going to move on in our meeting. It's really disappointing that we wouldn't start by trying to understand the situation. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. We will skip the mayor's report. He's said enough for the moment. Item 8, council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report out on goings-on in our community, other organizations or entities that they're familiar with or work with and think the residents ought to know about. We'll start on my right and go with Commissioner Davenport.
Thank you, Mayor. No report.
Danny.
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Leslie.
Just appreciate your comments, but no report, Mayor. Thank you.
Martin.
No report this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you for your comments, Mayor. No report.
Greg.
You can count me in that. Thanks, Mayor. Nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Manager's report tonight is going to be a continuation of our ongoing process of long-range planning. In this case, some of our high-priority action items related to our comprehensive plan. We will be taking about a 5-minute break. We will reconvene in the committee room. Everybody is welcome to join us there. We certainly would encourage that you do so. We are reconvened in the committee room. We are going to, the portion of the meeting that we're on right now, if you're watching at home, is the manager's report. This is a continuation of some of our conversations that we've had of late concerning the Fairview Avenue Business District and surrounding areas. And we have a conversation tonight that talks a little bit about, well, I'll let Dave introduce it. There's a package in front of you that I know everybody's had a chance to look at. It has to do a little bit with buildings and uses, and it's going to lead us eventually to some zoning conversations. Dave?
The implementation of the recommendations of the 2017 comprehensive plan for the Fairview area is a priority action item for us. So in plain English, we are working to implement the recommendations from a plan prepared a couple years ago. There are several components of that plan that you'll see in our presentation here tonight. But we are in the process right now of working on rezoning the Fairview area in a manner directed by this village council. We're on meeting number 4 of this particular process. Tonight, Jason Zawilla, our planning manager, will be presenting the slideshow and facilitating the discussion. You're going to hear a lot of concepts tonight, and they're exactly that. They're ideas. They're what might be. They are presented only to help the council give us policy direction. And even if the council gives head nods and direction to consider some of these concepts and ideas tonight, that doesn't mean they're a law yet. It doesn't mean they're in an ordinance yet. It doesn't mean they're going to happen. All it means is that as we proceed through this process, anything that the council says they want to learn more about will be continued in that conversation. Ultimately, we will produce a set of zoning rules and regulations for this area, but that's several months off. So tonight is really about identifying concepts, learning more about them, and tracking the general policy direction of this council as we move forward. So normally we'd have our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich, here with us tonight. He's a little under the weather, so his very capable partner in Community Development Department is Jason Zawilla, Planning Manager.
Good evening, Mayor Barnett, Village Council. So we are on our 4th meeting to discuss this topic. So we did receive the concepts, some information I had in your packet, so we are going to go over them and actually have a fun exercise tonight. The planners that I am and some of my friends here get excited anytime we can use a whiteboard, and especially with some diagrams over there too. So shortly, my friend Dave and Enzo will join us to catch some of the comments and go through each of these concepts too. But I'll go into that in a little bit. So just so everybody in the room and the council knows how tonight's agenda is going to work, is we'll go over the project description once again, so everybody's on the same page. We have some clarifications that we're going to offer from questions that were asked at the previous meeting, and then we're going to jump right into the Fairview 3 discussion to go over these 17 concepts that were presented in the packets to get that feedback to help us get to those next steps as part of the project. So again, with what we're working on for the Fairview Focus Area Plan implementation, action item is defining the area included in the project. We did that a couple of meetings ago, and what we've been really working through is the zoning framework, which I'll touch about in a minute, which could lead to amendments to the zoning ordinance and the zoning map. So as part of that, if you remember this diagram from the last meeting, we're still in the middle here. So we're going through the regulatory framework. This is big picture items, big concepts that help us get that feedback we need from this group to develop those text amendments with a future step. That's again updating the zoning ordinance, which is our regulatory documents, the actual law of what goes on to these properties potentially, and that's what we're here to get to that point. So just as a reminder, with the last meeting we talked about 3 different focus areas. Fairview 1 and 2 we'll briefly talk about just to give you a clarification, but really the majority of this meeting is going to be discussing concepts that could go into Fairview 3. So with the one clarification we have right out of the gate is there was a suggestion to add theaters and entertainment uses to the list of uses that could go into the zoning amendments. We noted that, and so when a text amendment does get in front of you, it will include those uses for the Fairview 1 and 2 areas too, so noted on that one. There was another question that came up at the last meeting for a term that we use, the built-to-zone. Planners like to use a lot of acronyms, as I'm sure you know. So this is one of the ones we actually use a lot when we're describing what people can do in the downtown. So this is a high-level explanation of the built-to-zone zoning requirements for the downtown, which is something that could potentially work for Fairview based off even the discussion we had at the last meeting. So the whole idea is that the build-to-zone has requirements that a certain portion of the building has to be at the property line, but there's also a provision in there too to talk about what open space could be in that front setback, and this is a diagram we put together just to demonstrate the area that an outdoor patio could be into this built-to-zone concept. So it's a regulation that really puts the building closer to the property line, the street, versus the setbacks you see in a typical residential neighborhood, for instance.
So before we go on from there, just in the way that Jason clarified the uses, if the council would like to see a build-to zone in the Fairview 1 and 2 regulatory framework, we'll happily put it in there. Based on previous discussions, I think that's what this council is looking for, so we're looking for head nods tonight. Is that something we want to see in the Fairview 1 and 2 area?
Thoughts?
Wait, for 1 and 2?
Or at least one? Should be
I'd say
correct,
for
at
one,
least
yeah.
I'd say at least one.
For one, yeah.
Go back to that drawing, Jason.
Sure.
In practice, have we in the past, or would we apply this, some of that outdoor patio stuff, 25 and 5, and whatever that might shake out to, but on other sides, only the side adjacent to the sidewalk?
This specific regulation is tied to what is in the built-to zone for this area too, where you could have a certain portion of the patio in that zone. That's where the built-to zone is.
But would we have that same sort of setbacks, the wrong choice of words, but that opportunity to not run the building all the way up to the edge of the property on the sides as well, or only in the front?
We certainly could design something with that if that's some feedback you want to offer us tonight.
I don't know what the answer but I think everybody, all the comments that I can kind of recall is people looking for some open space. And so I guess as a high-level thing, as we talk further, flexibility and how and where that is. I'm thinking about things like along the side of Valley Doyle. There's places where you might wish you had some of that space, not necessarily adjacent to the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So we're hearing not quite what we have on the books for downtown, but a little more flexibility in the build-to zone to create some
Yes.
openness?
Yeah, especially knowing that we have less open space in this district than we have in the downtown. Yeah.
Can any of that then be addressed in conjunction with design guidelines?
It could.
So not necessarily saying what you can't do, but here's what we're encouraging you to do?
Right. And that's the way this worked. If I wasn't clear on this one, this is not a requirement, but if
Okay.
somebody wants to put I'm just gonna say outdoor dining area in the private property side, they do have an option with the ordinance without having to seek relief, that there is a caveat in there that would allow that.
Yeah.
And we, right now, in the downtown design guidelines, do have guidance for outdoor areas as part of private property too.
Yeah, I think the important part about that is that at least on a privately owned parcel like this, that the outdoor space be active.
Yeah.
I think the idea of the build-to zone is you want to draw people in. It's you're trying to create an active space along the street. An outdoor patio for dining is quintessential for that. So whether it's on the side or right on the sidewalk, in my mind, it works as long as it's an active space.
I see heads not going there. So, yes, with the concept of the urban wall, but not as prescriptive as we have downtown, a little more flexibility to capture some open space that is directed towards activity and could be supported by whatever we come up with Fairview design guidelines for Fairview. Okay. I think we can deliver that in the next round when we write up the framework.
So I saw all that, not done that one. Okay.
Good,
Excellent.
good, thank you.
All right, so this is again for the geography of the area that all these concepts could apply to as you think about the discussion and offering us feedback is for the Fairview Zone 3 that we're calling it again. So again, this is the map for that area. So I'm going to just briefly go through the 3 slides that were shared at the last meeting to describe Fairview 3. And what you're actually going to notice with these slides is that we build upon these concepts to develop all of these additional concepts over there to kind of further some of the ideas we had over there to really get that feedback this evening too. So you're going to see some similar terms in here that we're going to feature with the concepts we're going to go through shortly. So again, with Fairview 3, it was designed to look like a residential neighborhood, walkable, have option for green space, potentially up to a 35-foot maximum building height, because that's what the current regulation is now, and then the potential to have 2 principal structures per lot, and you're going to see some concepts related to that shortly. The form is buildings are set back from the street, side, and rear property lines for Fairview 3. Green parkways, the street trees, sidewalk is part of that. The potential for single-family structures to be converted to office and commercial uses. And then there's the potential here for parking, and looking at that, we've heard some comments in the previous meeting, this is what we had up there before, is do we look at reducing the parking regulations, something similar to downtown, and then we would have to look at what the on-site and on-street parking requirements would be for something like this too. So all options, all potentials, nothing set in stone here. And then this is the use list that we presented on the potentials that you can have in this district. We were told to be permissive, flexible with this. You can have a variety of residential uses as listed in here. It could be an area that would welcome professional offices, salons, live-work units was a term that was used last time. The potential to have home occupations with a larger retail space allowance, and then institutional uses is always a possibility over here. So I won't go into detail on this one, but this is another ask or question that came up on what definitions we have in the code as it relates to some of these items. It is terms I am going to use throughout the description of each of these concepts. But here, household, dwelling, and dwelling unit, which has been provided in your packets ahead of time. Pause there for a quick second, just to make sure there's no comments and questions before I really dive into the concepts.
So everyone, back on the uses, I'm wondering how others might feel about restaurants being part of this as well. You know, I'm remembering a trip I took to St. Louis many years ago, and they've got this Italian district, and you're driving through the neighborhood and single-family homes, and then you come to a corner, there's a restaurant sitting there. It's the coolest thing ever. People just walking in and out, and it's part of the vibe of the neighborhood, and so I think that might be something that could be possible here.
I did it as a special use, not a permitted use.
Sure. No, 100%.
Yeah.
Because it depends.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that as a special.
It depends.
So if
Yeah.
we were going to do it, it would have to be a special use
Yeah,
in my
I
mind.
agree.
But I'm still not even sure I'm willing to go there, only because I'm kind of viewing Fairview 3 as a transition type district back toward the single family homes, and we've gotten a lot of folks who have said we don't want to be next to a larger multifamily building, larger being sort of relative, larger than what used to be there. And for example, the outdoor cafe that was proposed on Main Street with a new apartment building drew a lot of concern from adjacent single-family homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine I would feel similarly in that situation. So I think I'm leaning against at this point, but if we do it, it would have to be a special use.
Right, yes, but you're not going to get the kind of density and size and volume of 3 that you're going to get in 1 3. So this would really be almost a single-family residence type of situation.
Yeah.
Right.
And I could imagine an example, go down to Taylor Street, but it would absolutely have to be a special use because of all the things you just
It'd be a
mentioned.
rarity, yeah.
So it would have to be the kind of thing where the neighborhood would be like, yeah, this is cool, let's do it.
Right, yeah.
Just something to consider.
I don't know if I'm,
Yeah, so just jump in
Maine.
there. A lot of talk, some of the
Maine.
council members who are talking about special uses and permitted uses. That will be developed more when we
Later.
get into the actual zoning, but it's very helpful to hear it from those who are familiar with it now. What we're looking for tonight, to Commissioner Davenport's question, is if the council would like us to keep this conversation about restaurants in the Fairview 3 area going and keep talking about it as opposed to eliminate it, that's what we're looking for here tonight. Sorry, man.
I don't think I share that, Mike. I mean, I know the Hill well, and it's awesome, you're right. It's also really dense, lots of small lots, very small spaces between buildings. A lot of those corners are, were historically taverns or grocery stores. They're now restaurants. And when I look at our map, it's a cool use, I'm not disagreeing with you. But when I look at our map and I think about what that might look like in reality, I don't feel like that's real additive to our goals of sort of spurring activity and development, and I think it'd be really an outlier. And the danger of special uses is that they're kind of permitted, in some ways. They're enumerated as a use under conditions. That's another conversation, as Dave said, but I put me down in the category of, not real hot on that one.
It wasn't a head nod, it was a meh.
Yeah. That's part of, one of the things tonight, guys, is for a lot of this, right? So that staff can hear us talking to each other and getting excited or saying meh.
Sure.
Yeah, if I can, I think I would agree to explore it. I think I would, there's just such a wide spectrum of what that could mean, so I would want to limit it at this point. I also agree that there are certain types of establishments that I think those around wouldn't necessarily want there.
Sure.
But I think, I mean, just throwing out a breakfast place that's 9 to 2, or a coffee shop that's, you know, 8, yeah, something that's small scale, artesian kind of thing, I would not necessarily be opposed to, but with some,
Yeah.
you know, making sure it fit in with that characteristic, as Commissioner Jose said, of that transitional area. So I wouldn't outright say no. I would like to look at that and maybe explore more, but with the same caveat of, like, as Commissioner Tully said, like, it depends on the place.
Yeah, I'm kind of of the same mindset. There are a couple spots specifically in 3 where I could see it potentially working, especially if we have more multifamily units in some of these areas, or we already do have some multifamily units in some of these areas, so I can see how there could be a couple options like that, but yeah, kind of feel the same way.
And pulling on that thread, 3 might turn into 3 and 4 as we go through this process, right? If you see distinctions within the areas.
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah.
if you look along Rogers, you know, I mean, right across the street, you got Goldfinger. I mean,
Yeah.
so, I mean, depending on what it is, and I just, it
And the
just,
impact on the surrounding neighbors and.
just seemed like a possibility that I thought we should maybe consider.
But to that example, though, I mean, in my mind, that's why one side of Rogers is 2 and the other side is 3, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I love this feedback already because you're giving excellent input once we actually get to P, because we're going to be talking about it. There's a lot of commercial property on there too. So we're taking notes over there. We're also remembering that too when we get there. I know you've looked at the slides ahead of time, but definitely for those in our audience too, is that these slides were constructed in a very specific way just so we can help follow along and get the feedback we desire tonight. So the left side of the screen is going to have an image of what we're trying to describe as the concept. That's what the 17 concepts we have up here, but then on the slide itself is a brief description. If we currently allow it in town or in Fairview or not at all, so we make sure to touch on that. And then just additional information depending on what the concept is over there too. So I'm going to go over that with every concept we go through. We intentionally group these concepts into 4 topic areas. We will take a pause, but obviously the questions and comments have them keep on flowing. But we will pause at the end of each of these to get the commentary, just like we've already started this evening too. So does that work for everybody? Excellent. All right, so we're going to go through the first type, which is the residential housing types. All 3 of these are currently permitted throughout the F3 area that I'm going to go through, but just to probably go on this one a little more quicker because I think we're all familiar with this. It's single-family homes, detached single-family is how we have it in our code. So that's the case where you have a detached garage, or in this case, an attached garage too. So that's what that's meant to represent. And like I just noted, currently permitted throughout the F3 area today. Then you have the attached house, the townhome, the duplex home, in many different terms, but it's 2 units. We have 2 separate households that have a shared wall. You know, this could be 2 units, it could be 3 units, depending on the size of the lot, but that's something that is currently permitted in a vast majority of the F3 area today.
I just had a quick question, if I can. When we say 2 separate households, I just want to make sure I understand that concept. It's not that they can't be related, it's just that the limits are applied based on non-blood relatives based on the 2 different units. So for example, in your definition, you talked about it being 2 or more people related in whatever way they're related, and not more than 3 unrelated.
Right, so it would be, per our definition, yes, Raj?
So that you could have, it has, the 2 separate doesn't mean that they're not related, it just means you have the ability, I could live there, my brother could live next door, we could have 6 non-related people amongst the two because it's 2 separate.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah.
And then our third concept is the multi-units or apartment or condo. So it's currently permitted in a majority of the proposed F3 area today. So this was going to be a slightly quicker one. We'll put a summary screen over here. This is what we're going to do at the end of each of them just to help everybody remember. In this case, everything is currently allowed in the FA3. So I guess at this feedback, we just want to make sure this is our first gut check, continue forward with all these uses, no issues.
Yes.
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 Yep.
Did you get all that?
All of these, see okay with these? Got it. That's easy.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to quickly move on to the next one, which is the topic of residential accessory uses and structures. So this one, we have 6 very specific concepts that I'm going to present right now. Before we get into that, it is very important for me to take a quick pause here to highlight what we have currently in our ordinance, and that is the extended family accessory housing. Looked right before this meeting, we have 5 on the books right now that have taken this as an opportunity. It is a special use, so you do have to go through the Planning Commission, Village Council entitlement process. The unit has to be within a detached house. You can only have one of these units per each detached house. Could have a separate front door. The property owner or the resident must live in the detached house. Residents must be related, and we got 2 qualifiers for that. You have to be over 62 years old or disabled. And then basically the essence of the ordinance is it still has to look like a detached house, single-family residence. And then an administrative process that we have is every year, actually this month, is we mail out, in this case, those 5 residents just to make sure that they're still using it as proof of special use. And we've had cases where they've either informed us ahead of time or they received this notice that they are no longer using that, and they have a clause for the special use to revert back to it being a full single-family house too. So we've had that happen too. So that's the extended family accessory housing. I'm going to use it a couple of times just to make sure everybody's familiar with the definition. So the very first example is a single-family detached house with this extended family unit. That's what this is meant to represent. We gave everybody a color key too. It's also intentional. We try to use the same colors as we talk about these different topics to keep everybody on track. So as I already noted, that this is a special use in a very small area of the F3 area today. And again, you have to have a single household that's in here to be able to take advantage of that extended family unit.
Why just the small area, Tracy?
Oh, sorry, because the zoning that's in the FA3 area is for single-family residential zone districts. And so in this case, it's, I believe, R4 we have in there. So that's why it's a small area. So we're going to expand upon that. This is the first new concept that you're going to see is the idea of an extended family unit in the detached garage. And for this purpose, it's assumed to be on the 2nd story on top of a garage, but it could be in the accessory structure too. Without the garage, 2 different ways we can look at that. It's currently not permitted throughout the village today, so this would be something new that we don't allow today. And again, the same single housing, but that has to be related based off of our current ordinance. So again, the age or disability, so that's what this concept represents. The next concept is another new one that we don't have in here. It's the idea of the accessory dwelling unit. So this is where you have 2 households that are connected internally by a doorway in the unit over there too. 2 different households though, so per our definitions would be in this concept over here too. And then the next one would be having an accessory dwelling units in the garage. Again, the same concept that I discussed 2 slides ago, where you can have 2nd floor in the garage or in a whole building just for the accessory dwelling unit on there. 2 households again, but the assumption is the ADU is smaller than the principal structure of the single family home. A term that's been used more frequently is the tiny house, and so staff's intent on presenting this one was based off of the current building code definition, which is a maximum size of 400 square feet. That's what we have in the newly adopted building code, so that's the size for that. Also not permitted throughout the village now, but then 2 households, but a much smaller ADU than the previous slides we just showed. Right now, the concept is based again off of the building code for this one. We just got one more, and then we'll see some of that feedback. And this is the idea of 2 detached single-family houses on one lot. They could be the same size. Not talking about a flag lot here. It's actually having 2 principal structures on here that have 2 households that reside, 2 different households that reside in each of the buildings there too. So that's the idea on this concept. So just to summarize again, we have another spectrum of options over here, allowed through the special use process in D in a very small area right now in FA3, but then all of these other concepts are not currently allowed, and that's where we want to see some feedback because it's something that council would be open to.
Mike?
So what would you say really is the difference between G and I? Is it just that the accessory dwelling unit somehow is limited in size to being smaller than the detached single-family home? And is it just that it's 1 square foot smaller, or is it, you know, how do we?
Yeah, the concept is the size. We wouldn't develop the actual details until we got into a proposed zoning ordinance. But conceptually, I think you're right on, Commissioner, right on.
So one of the things that occurs to me is that when we look at E and G, right, it wouldn't make sense to me to do E unless you were going to allow G, because I can't see somebody spending an extraordinary amount of money to create that extended family unit, knowing that after some period of time, they might have to say, I'm not allowed to do that anymore because I don't have somebody who's 62 years old and blah, 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 and so on and so forth, right? If you're going to build that, it needs to be something that's usable and would stay with the property.
So it's not like, Mike's got a lot of experiences. Jason, what would it look like? What would have to be removed to that plan? Is that like removing a kitchen or something?
Kitchen and the bathroom. So one or the other is what we typically would ask for in a situation like that.
One or the other.
Yeah.
So build a whole kitchen, then remove it, to your
I
point.
get it.
Yeah.
And then,
Right.
yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then after you go, we put the stove back in. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you police?
Just don't put it in the bathroom.
Right,
That would be
right,
very
that would be
odd.
the-
Yeah. Keep the stove in the kitchen, that'd be great.
But the important part is it's still going to be comfortable if you get in trouble with your wife.
Right.
The existing allowed uses are allowed throughout the community in their appropriate zoning class, correct? It's an R3, it applies whether it's, and so as we consider these changes, that premise would still apply, yes?
Well, these changes the concepts we're discussing now would simply apply only to Fairview.
So we
Fairview 3.
Fairview
3, yeah.
Only apply to Fairview 3.
For now.
I
Not
don't
to
believe we're
for now.
discussing
There's the key.
allowing this village-wide, just Fairview 3.
Okay, that's an important
Yes.
distinction. I think somebody mentioned at one point they were, wanting to avoid creating something that was somehow unique in a negative sense. It's just something to keep in mind.
I would go so far as to say is whatever we decide here feels like it's opening a door for what others in the village may want.
I agree with you. I was going to call it Pandora's box.
Oh, I would not call it Pandora's box.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity for us to look at different concepts and different possibilities and then have some experience.
Yes.
And the things that work are things that we would apply elsewhere in town. And certainly there'll be some things that we may look at and go, hey, this didn't work so well. Definitely don't do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's controlled, right?
Yes.
I understand that.
But I think we have some experience with E, and E is as far as I'm willing to go. Because E, we have examples of right now where, although I would actually consider expanding E to not just 62 years old and older,
Yeah.
because I think
Right.
you could have a college kid,
Yep.
you could have, there's a whole bunch of other categories other than somebody who's disabled and 62 that you would see having an apartment over a garage. So basically what you're talking about is an existing garage. It's also functioning as a garage. So it goes to your point of why is someone going to build it? Because it's the garage. But then above it, you also have a full living space that you could put a family member in, and I think that's something that I think makes sense. Frankly, we already have it in some situations, or maybe they're not living there, but it's
Right.
been built out where you could.
So your version of that
There's
basically takes the household.
There's an example on
definition.
Maple Avenue.
It takes the household definition and applies it to the existing.
Correct, and it's we'll get into the family issues later, but what I'm envisioning is you basically have what we would normally see and expect to see in this zoning district is what is a house and a garage. A house and a detached garage, except the garage has been built out to also facilitate someone living there. And whether it's a disabled person, whether it's an elderly parent, whether it's a college kid, whatever. That I think is something that some flexibility is worthy of. F, G, H, and I, and actually I was going to talk about F, G, and H, but now I'm convinced that all of those are non-starters in my opinion, and here's why. You are right, they're not flag lots, but they might as well be. In fact, in my opinion, they're worse than flag lots. Once upon a time, this community allowed flag lots. And the only thing it did was benefit developers who wanted to maximize the profit from the sale of the property.
Agreed.
That was it. So it didn't benefit the village. In fact, it was detrimental to the village for a whole list of reasons I can bore you to death about. And we finally eliminated flag lots. So we still have them because there are ones that were developed at the time and they still exist. And Danny could probably tell you about the challenge of trying to sell one of those things, but that's another story. And I would be hard no to bringing back anything that resembles a flag lot, which I think I is, because the only difference between I and a flag lot is you're not actually splitting the lots.
Right. That's exactly
which is
right.
worse,
It's a little dotted line.
in my opinion. So I would rather look at other ways that we can encourage some of the goals and objectives that we've talked about in some of these other uses, but I just think, and I was going to say maybe F is okay, but then you start to get into this, what's the difference between F, and actually your question is what caused me to become more restrictive on this. But I think G, H, and I, and by the way, I'm a fan of the tiny house. My oldest son is a big fan of tiny houses, but not in this configuration.
And Martin, just pulling that thread a little bit, you were talking about expanding the definition of family as it moves into this garage option. Does it have to have a garage, or can it be a separate?
I'm willing to explore more of that. I mean, what I have in my head right now, because that's why, by the way, these illustrations are super helpful, because seeing them, it allows you to take a concept and visualize it. I mean, E, I'm thinking of, I know of an example of that in town, so it's in my head. Are there other variations? Maybe. I'd be open to thinking about it, but that's kind of as far as, that's kind of as far as I would go.
The way things exist right now, you can build a detached garage with a space above it, with a bathroom.
With a bathroom,
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. That's
So the nuance here is just whether or not there's the ability to cook. That's, I mean,
Right.
that's it.
Well, and tenancy potential.
Sure,
That's a pretty dramatic nuance.
sure.
That's the difference for those following,
Yeah.
between an extended family unit versus a full-on accessory dwelling.
Yeah. Now, those are reasonable points, and I appreciate the discussion, because when I came in, I was thinking, I'm good with the way it is, and I'm not interested in anything else. I'm open to thinking about E, but I would agree that F, G, H, and I are a bridge too far for me. I think the flag lot comparison is apt. It's just too much, and in a configuration that, as Martin described, looks like what you would expect in this in a single-family neighborhood. It's tougher to say, well, no, I don't think we should do that. And I agree on lifting the age restriction as well for the extended family unit.
Mike, you wanted to say something else?
Yeah, currently, in most of Fairview 3, we allow two units on the lot, don't we?
Side by side.
Side by sides.
Townhouses, duplexes.
So conceptually,
It's not the
why
same
is F objectionable knowing that?
Well, that's the difference between R4 and R5, right? Am I remembering that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So I think what we're talking about here, E would be on an R4 lot,
Right.
and a side-by-side, a duplex would be an R5.
Well, because you expect to see townhomes where you find townhomes zoned for. You expect to see apartment buildings where you see, or condominiums where you expect you don't expect to see two single-family homes on the same lot.
So this would be helpful to, go ahead, Mike.
So just fundamentally though, I mean, isn't F in a side-by-side? I mean, we're kind of talking the same thing there, aren't we?
Well, that's why I'm not crazy about F. I was actually thinking F might be okay.
Except we allow the side-by-side in almost all.
Yeah, but there's, well, we can go back to the practical challenges. There are practical challenges about public safety, there are practical challenges about where's the front door. There's a whole bunch of issues that we came up with flag lots.
Not to mention there's
So it's different because of the way the building is designed and how the entrance is presented and what's, I'm trying to remember now, a long time ago. There are practical aspects to it, administrative aspects to it, public safety aspects to it, as well as most people don't like them.
So let's add some detail to that. In the areas, now we're going to violate our rules and go into zoning, but some of F3 is zoned one thing, some of F3 is zoned another. Some allow single, some of the multifamily. In the areas that allow multifamily or single-family attached townhomes, that's not exactly this because of what Martin was talking about. The definition of single-family attached means you take a house and you put it together like this, and the whole thing is they are a whole dwelling unit, as we defined, and they are separated completely from the next and abutting dwelling unit. Okay? These could have connections into them that feel a little bit like connecting hotel
The
rooms.
example is a door. You walk into the house, walk all the way through, and there's a door just to get into that back unit.
Right? So two completely different households, but connected structurally in a way that's very different than, that was, I think, what Martin was talking about, one of the examples.
The graphic, okay? So you could have presented a graphic that showed the accessory dwelling unit on the side.
Sure.
Yeah,
We could have, yeah.
Except on that 50-foot wide lot, it's not gonna happen.
Oh, I can make it happen.
Oh, that's the problem with flag lots, is that, oh, yeah, we can squeeze every last penny out of this property and
Is there,
leave the city to deal
on the
with it.
extended family unit, adjacent D and F, do we have something in our ordinance right now, I didn't see it in that bullet list, that drove the graphic to be distinct from a size? And an extended family unit attached, is there a size limit of some kind, or why does that look,
Yeah,
DNF
we base this off of most of the past applications we've got in front of us. It's just to put that concept on there too. I don't believe there is a size, it does have to be accessory to the size of the principal structure on there too, but we can look into that.
So the accessory, use of the word accessory in F and G and in this conversation is distinct and separate from accessory structure.
Not of the same household is the way to look at
That's
it.
the definition.
Same household as we would define it, not the same households.
So
The
just as
people
a
living in it.
fictitious example, the Barnetts live here.
There you go.
You got this nice little family, the Zawillas, that are going to move into the
Oh, there's a sitcom.
That's not happening.
So it's a completely two different families over there too, just so we can visualize that.
We have a hair requirement in our neighborhood.
But that's fine, that's fine.
So the Fieldmans and the Zwillas are going to live.
Yeah, that works.
Right? So this is somebody who's related, as we were talking about. These households have a household relationship at some level, whatever we decide. These do not.
So for the scorekeeper, I'm of the same thought process right now as I think Greg and Martin are. D and E, and broadening the definition of a family unit.
Okay.
To more
Household, right.
consistent with what we currently use as the word household,
Yep.
are where my mind is.
So we got
Second
three
that.
folks thinking the same way right now.
Yeah.
Danny, same thing.
Question. So we currently have a size limitation for accessory structures, right? So wouldn't the extended family unit still have to comply with that, which I think is 600 square feet?
Under roof, 1,000.
1,000?
So that's kind of stuff we'd get to in a zoning, right? So those are the concepts that Jason Stan and Enza and their teams will develop if you say you want to learn more. But in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't draw these exactly the same size, but we were trying to convey that the blue or yellow is smaller than the orangey red, right? But when you get over here, we were just saying they were two complete different houses. The size regulations as they relate to the principal, structure, and accessory, if you say you like these, then we'll start developing those specifics. But that's what we're trying to convey, is the size.
Yeah. Frankly, the other thing on F is that if you're going to build something where it's two in the same, you're going to build it to support that. You're not going to tack something on the back and then call it that just seems very, to borrow a phrase from Paul Hollywood in the Great British Baking Show, it's very claggy.
Can you add claggy definition to the next presentation?
Yeah, the attorney tells the architect.
Yeah, right.
Usually those people do not advance the conversation.
Right, okay.
I'm with everyone else on the D and E. I'm not willing to completely throw the F out, though. I just think that there is a way to configure that in such a way to address some of the concerns with some of the zoning limitations. So
Open to
Why don't
that,
we just
so
build a
Mr.
townhome
Briggs.
is what I'm getting at. Why are we forcing this configure. I mean, I realize there's creative ways to do it, but just build a townhome then.
But if there's an existing house there, that may be the only configuration you could do if we were allowing the accessory dwelling. So yes, ideally, if it's an empty lot, you build a townhome, but if, so to me, it seems like one of the fundamental questions here is whether or not we want to allow two separate households. Like, that's what this, at least, is mapped out to me.
Correct.
So before I answer that, from my perspective, I do not think the extended family unit needs to be a garage. I know that's the vision that we all, because that's the application that we've seen it, but I don't necessarily think, I would be in favor, because then you're limiting to those who just have external garages.
Isn't D?
But
I'm saying, no, E could be a separate building,
Right.
but
E
not
doesn't
over a garage.
He doesn't have to have a garage.
It could be a tiny house, a little.
Coach house is a term.
Coach house, exactly,
It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
counting as your
Yeah,
accessory structure.
so,
Got it.
Potentially, yeah.
that's, so I think that's a distinction I would like to see.
So say it one more time, Chris. The distinction you like to see is that it doesn't necessarily have to be a garage.
Correct, or the extended unit, the living space doesn't have to be above a garage or built on a garage.
So fair point. So maybe next time we look at what other variations would be of E. I mean, E's an illustration, but
Yeah.
obviously there could be other
Yeah.
variations that aren't in my head.
Yeah, and I could just see that being a
Willing to look at
single-story
Yeah.
house, little house, or mother-in-law suite, as they sometimes call it. I don't think I would go so far with F, G, H, and I. I'm just not sure just this idea of creating a landlord-tenant situation in these areas just doesn't feel like it fits that environment. Because even the tiny house, we're saying that anything yellow is accessory, so that means the Gilmartins live in the yellow, or in the orange, and the Davenports live in the yellow.
No way.
That's right. Mayor Barnett, are you
I think
gonna
I've
be on my
just
house,
set
so
it up,
you
yeah.
flip it around.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm at E with and I also agree with opening up what defines the
Yeah.
family that can live in that spot.
So I keep going back to, though, what's currently allowed in Fairview 3, right? So
Mhm.
we allow apartment buildings in the majority, current regulations currently permitted in the majority of the proposed F3
Yeah.
area. Multi-unit apartment condos are already.
Yeah,
So
I
you've
just
got-
see-
So you've got a landlord.
I just see that as just a different structure. It just seems like a different structure, an apartment building or a multi-tenant unit. It definitely feels different, so.
There is a balance.
I could be convinced, but
There is a balancing of, I think Greg's used it most often, Martin used it earlier, of, expectation, right? We have residents and businesses in all these places, and so I think, sort of along the lines of what Chris is saying, if a parcel comes down, an existing parcel takes a single-family house down, and it's zoned for one of the townhomes, right? 3 townhomes go up there. It's going to look like 3 townhomes. If the person buys a house next door to a house, they're kind of expecting it's either going to be a house or something different. That's something kind of used differently. It's a really bad way of describing it, but this idea of there are some expectations for existing residents and businesses about what something is, and trying to allow a little more creativity and a little more flexibility while still maintaining some of that is part of what my mind is.
So I'm listening a lot, and I can understand the concerns given flag lots, all those things. I'm definitely good with expanding D&E to, beyond family, whatever. That's all fine. I would still not close the door on FG or H, to be honest. If we are thinking of this area as kind of a potentially young professionals, theater, like kind of arts district, those are not folks who typically can afford a single-family home when you're first getting off of the, getting on your feet. Like I, have a lot of friends who have been in the arts, right? And that's not, the place where you make money right off the bat. And so I could see, somebody young or just starting off wanting just a small space close to potentially where they're either working or have an art space. So thinking about how different this district might be from some of the other ones that we have in town, I would be okay with going through H. But I'm very aware that I'm probably on the losing end of that. Again, it would have to be worked out. I'm not saying that, when it came down to the final push that I would go for it, but I would be interested in hearing more about it moving forward.
And that's a fair point, because I actually thought about that quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, my concern is, again, my perspective is biased.
I get
from
it.
Previous
Yeah.
experiences
Yeah.
in this. But
Yeah.
when people get given the opportunity to do this,
Right.
they're maximizing the value of those things, and they are
Sure.
not building something that the art folks are going to be able
Sure.
to live in. So while it seems like that would be great,
Possibility.
what we saw was, it was all about
Oh, I'm
how
sure.
can I maximize the value
You're
and
right.
sell it or rent it for the most money I possibly can. It was not, that's just what happened,
Yeah.
which is one of the reasons why
Right.
Maybe a question of clarity for F, G, and H. And I know that maybe this is zoning down the road, but I think in my head, it's been mostly like rental.
Right. Yeah.
But we're not necessarily limiting it. Could someone sell an accessory dwelling unit to somebody else?
Let's take those two things separately. I'm
Okay.
going to keep glancing at my front end.
Yeah.
This gets
Yeah.
a little challenging. Say it again, Chris. wanna make
I was
sure
just,
you're right.
the accessory dwelling units, they're separate households. In my mind, that's a rental to
Got it.
another.
On the
But-
rent versus own, the zoning ordinance does not make distinctions on land use versus rent versus own, right? That's correct, does not make distinctions on rent versus own. Land uses, not, right?
Yeah,
Generally speaking, there's some exceptions in minor little areas, right? But generally speaking, we don't say this is zoned for ownership and this is zoned for rental. It's not really how we do that. The thing about could you sell this off, the answer is going to be no, not under our current zoning and our
Single parcel.
current plat of subdivision regulations, because you would have to subdivide these.
Right. It's a single
And if you
parcel.
subdivide them, for example, to sell this from this, you
Then it
have to
would be a
make it a
flag lot.
flag
You
lot.
won't meet the minimum lot requirement.
Yeah.
Correct.
Did I
Right.
get that right, Emma?
Yeah, because they wouldn't meet our
Or,
So
so,
then you
yeah.
maximize your rent.
But could you
That's what happens.
basically create a little condo association where both people are owning the property, but the units individually? Could that
Probably.
happen?
Oh, isn't Illinois one of the few states that allows co-ops? Or is that Chicago?
Just
Just Chicago.
make sure we're covering all our bases.
You could potentially, but not currently under our zoning ordinance. I mean, you'd have to.
what I'm saying.
Because this is not currently allowed, we haven't really parsed that one out yet. Right? Hadn't gone there yet, Commissioner Davenport. Very interesting question about HOA
It's
and
more in Pandora's box.
condominium ownership.
Well, gotta look at it from all angles.
No, it's true. It's a discussion.
Everybody feel like they've weighed in?
This is,
Dave, you feel like you got
I was just going to say, this is exactly what we wanted to hear. I don't know how it's going to end up, yes or no, in the next step, but we will reflect
Yeah.
it back. It's fantastic.
I was just counting to see that you had 7. So
just did the same
I think
exercise
everybody's weighed
over
in.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just making sure.
All right, want some spots?
You keep going. You keep presenting.
Okay.
Enzo's got that side behind
Okay.
me.
All right, so thank you for the feedback so far. Oh, I don't know a bit. All right, so we're gonna get into the next set. So behind me is, we're gonna discuss home occupation. Home occupation. So we have 3 different concepts for that, but just like the last one, we're gonna go over the definition of what home occupation is right now in our ordinance. So in this case, the operator must live in the residence. It must be a resident that resides inside the home. They could actually have one employee that's not related For that, the max size is 25% or 400 square feet, whichever is less. So we do have a size restriction in the zoning ordinance on this. Must be conducted with the residents. We actually have prohibitions that you can't operate your business out of the accessory structure or the garage. We have some more operational characteristics on this one too. That goes into this, and only one home occupation is allowed. So related to this, we did have a slide in the previous deck that was published that actually had some errors, so we do apologize for that. With that original slide, it did list what the uses are allowed right now for home occupations, but we also ended up listing the other ones that are prohibited as home occupations in there too, so that's what that list originated. So for today's exercise though, we just wanted to confirm that the home occupations that are currently allowed is generally your professional offices. That's what we see with my department. That is a common question we get on what you can do in the home, and that's how we're able to answer that. So that's our definition of home occupation. So with the first one is what's allowed right now and permitted throughout the F3. So that's a home occupation, just a visual diagram there on what that could represent. So in this case, single family detached house. The next one is a home occupation that is greater than that 400 square feet. This is just the concept. It could be larger than this, but just again, we're looking at something that's going to be over the size requirement that we have in the ordinance right now. But the home occupation would still be smaller than the actual portion of the dwelling space or the dwelling unit. The third concept is the idea of putting the home occupation in the garage. As I just stated, that's something that's not allowed today. So we'd be looking at expanding, and again, it's the home occupation that's related to the household that lives in the structure, and it could be in the detached garage. And again, we talked about two different concepts today, but that would be in this idea above the garage, the second story on there too, or potentially in the accessory structure in the cottage that was even mentioned earlier too. So that's how this concept could work. So with this one, allowed is what's in our home occupation ordinance today, and then the different variations of this if we were looking to expand it in the FA3 area for this discussion. So be welcome to any feedback, comments on this one.
Well, kick us off. I can tell you that L is probably going on right now. I mean, it's something that you wouldn't even, I could tell you, I know, I'm in the know, I'm an architect, that's what I do, but if I was just somebody, not in my profession, moving into town, buying a house, hey, look, there's this nice space above the garage, I think I'll do my, conduct my business up there instead of out of the gut of the house. I mean, it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to regulate. I'm suggesting we probably aren't doing a whole lot to regulate that right now. And I don't see the harm in allowing L for sure.
So when
What
you
kind of
say,
business?
thank you.
The ones that are allowed.
Right. Isn't that allowed already?
No.
No.
So just to put a finer point on it, when you say conducting business, I mean, it's one thing if you got an office, it's another thing if you've got a hair salon up there, or if you're making retail sales or something like that. So
Yeah. I think there's a difference between commercial and home occupation,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Commercial would be more,
Commercial, right.
yeah.
So we're talking strictly, we're talking about.
Strictly our existing
attorneys,
home occupation
architects,
ordinance, yes.
accountants.
Yeah.
This is home occupation.
Yeah.
So let's do this with the existing uses first.
Yeah.
And then we can come back and circle back to which of the ones end up still on the list. Do you want to expand the uses of home occ? And remember, home occ, different than the next category, which is commercial business. So Jason, could you do your Barnett Zawilla example again?
Yeah, so, well, in this case, it's all Barnett all day long.
Yeah,
So
all
with this
Barnett.
one, he's over here, when he needs a separate space to do his thing, he's got his office over here, for the operations over there too. So when we get into the next category, we'll use another example. I was gonna go with Fieldman's Finer Things.
That's fine.
Okay. All right, so that's gonna be somebody that's not in the household, they're leasing, renting, I know it's an operational item, but they're not related to the household, and there's space that's dedicated to another commercial business over there too. So we're going to get to that shortly, but think about that. That's the big difference here. Same household, home occupation related to whoever lives there.
Well, I think Mike's right, and frankly, I don't see the problem with J, K, or L for the existing
Same.
uses. That's easy. And then when we get to it, I'd be willing to talk about expanding the uses.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel the same.
Same
I'm
here.
sorry, I'll be the stick in the mud. Run me through the definition of home occupation again.
So the operator must live, so that's you're the residents over there operating the business. You can have one separate employee that is not part of your household. We have the size requirement, no more than 400 square feet or 25%, whichever is larger. It has to be conducted within the residence. We have some operational things that I skipped over, but I'll go in detail now. It's on-premise sales and regular deliveries are prohibited, so you can't have that occur on the site. The detached house must still look like the detached house. We have a provision for a very small wall sign that would be allowed. And it's limited to the number of vehicles allowed on the site. No more than one home occupation is allowed. And we do have a prohibition that it can't be in a second-story detached garage.
That's exactly what I do. That's my house.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
my
that's your
life.
So why can't it be a sculptor studio or a million other things?
Sure.
It's just
Yeah.
architects and
Right.
CPAs and attorneys.
Art studio.
If they're not selling anything.
Does that answer your question? And if
Yes.
so, where do you fall on
Yes,
those?
thank you. I'm good with K, and I'm thinking about L.
Okay.
I'm good with all of them.
I'm good with all of them.
You're good, Holland?
And I, like others have mentioned, I might have some interest in expanding.
You're Holland too?
I'm all in, yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
And it'll probably blend into the commercial conversation.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
that's going to be interesting.
It's me you're missing, Enza.
Yes.
And I'm in on all of them too, and I'm interested in potentially expanding as well. We have a completely different way people are working these days.
I know, yeah.
It's not just
Yeah.
these type of,
Yeah.
so we gotta, there's an opportunity to see what we can do.
So why don't we start talking about uses beyond what we currently offer?
So some of the uses I did have on there, I'll share a couple just to start the discussion on there too, was, well, let's talk about restaurants. We talked about that already today.
And you're starting with the hard one.
Yeah, that's right. Retail sales, so we actually having customers come to the site for a retail storefronts. We had manufacturing on there, but that is some of this artisanal industrial type uses that we've been talking about in previous. The art studio is the potential on there too. Medical or dental offices, that's another one you might see in other communities that are part of the same house. So just a couple ideas to get the discussion going, but if there's any other uses you might be thinking of there?
We already have don't we already have an ordinance with respect to daycare centers?
Daycare is separate from the home occupation ordinances, but yes, we do have ordinance related to that.
I mean, the yoga studio, a chiropractic, whatever you call it, office.
Yeah, masseuse, yeah.
Sure.
Well, it can play a role in this affordability question. Right?
Yeah.
If you're able to make that be part of your collective. for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I agree.
We did have the.
Greg's on the fence.
I wouldn't expand to any of those. Anything that's going to generate more traffic into the single-family neighborhood? No.
No class action depositions in your attorney office?
My attorney office is in the middle of the loop.
You can do that right now. Use the dining room table as the boardroom.
I think
Keeping on
that's
the
what
theme
Zoom's
of
for.
learning more, should we continue this conversation or not? I think I feel kind of the opposite way, Greg. I'm more inclined than not to want to expand
I am
those
too.
definitions. I'm sure there are some, we probably don't want a
Right.
steel fabricating plant in a garage.
Yeah.
But
The
probably
more
not.
permits that are required, the less my interest would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't have business licenses.
No, I mean like ventilation.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Fire safety.
Health inspections.
Yeah.
The more
Yeah.
you start getting into that stuff,
Yeah.
then
Agree.
it's
I
not
think I-
meeting with expectations of the
I
neighborhood.
agree.
I think I view this as like sort of the service offering, like rather than restaurant and I don't know, this home occupation to me feels more
Like one or two
service,
people
so
at a
I
time.
would,
Yeah.
I would think of it more in that regard.
What about
Yeah.
widget retail, like a record store or an art, I made something
I
like a
don't think
purse.
so. I don't think under this,
I mean, I could see
I
that.
feel like that's all commercial, like, The
I think
distinction
less retail oriented, less public
Yeah, it
coming
feels-
in.
Yeah.
More like you need an appointment.
Yeah.
Right, which there could be some, like, specialized art that is by appointment only, right? I mean, I think of like the framing place, right, that we,
Yeah.
on 63rd, right? That is basically appointment only, it's specialty stuff. I could see that being allowed here, and again, and again, I could, we already have limited number of vehicles. I'm sure that could be part of our discussion as well, to make sure that we are not overwhelming the neighborhood with traffic. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I'm interested in expanding.
Yeah, I think I'm probably sympathetic to the idea of a lot of traffic, but what's a lot, right? To Leslie's point, a vehicle thing, I mean, coming and going isn't necessarily in itself not okay. You could have a photographer who is doing, headshots and family photos all day long. You could
And
have a
from 9 to
smoke group.
5, when most people, a lot of people aren't at home, and parking's pretty available in the residential areas. Might be easier to even talk about what we definitely don't want to allow versus trying to identify all the things that we think we do want to allow.
And this will be important too when we get into the next topic, because this assumes it's the same household.
Right.
I live there. We're going to get into the same topic, but with
Yeah.
businesses that can locate on the same property.
You feel like you're getting a sense of enough to move on to commercial? I mean, these are gonna be related,
I think
right?
so, unless there are some that are specifically not interested in this.
I mean,
It might be the same.
yeah, I don't know. It's not to say I wouldn't necessarily, like we talked about the restaurant thing earlier, but I don't know, that just doesn't feel like that a home occupation type
No.
thing. 'cause
No,
it's-
I agree.
Because
That feels commercial.
Likely need more than one.
You would need more than one employee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it says only one employee, does that mean a single person working or a person plus one employee?
2 part-timers.
No, I mean,
One FTE.
One person who's
the
not.
operator lives there, and then only one employee.
Yes.
I'm not gonna.
Yes.
So
I'm not
I
gonna
can
out myself,
operate
but
and have one employee.
I have a partner.
On premise, yeah.
Is that allowed now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I started my business.
I thought I was in trouble.
Me too. Okay. Okay.
Shelley, you have to find me.
I think, I don't know, expansion but service, I think that's what it said for me.
Yeah.
Expansion but
It's going to
service.
be independent contractor.
Yeah.
Okay. You okay moving on to the next one? Because I think we're going to go back
Yeah.
and forth on this a little
Sure.
bit.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So the last and final color with this is the idea of a commercial business. So with all of these concepts, the idea here is that it's a separate entity, not part of the household. And so I'll use a quick example here. So in this case, you have a detached single-family house that's lived in by the Glovers behind over here, and then Fieldman's Finer Things is the commercial business in the front of the house. So that's what the idea of this concept is. We do not permit this throughout the village today. And then that commercial space could be rented to the non-resident that doesn't reside into that site over there too. The next one's going to be another familiar concept, right? The detached single-family house, the residence, but then they lease or rent to a separate commercial business in the accessory structure in the rear in this case. The next one kind of flips that idea, is where the commercial business is actually what the front-facing structure is visible from the street, and then you have a smaller detached single-family house in the rear. This again rented to a separate entity that doesn't live on the property. This is what we really started talking with this meeting about too, is the idea of a commercial business solely on the property. We don't have any residential on this one. I'm just going to use the restaurant example because we were talking about that a lot early on. So that is where you would either have a house that was renovated into a commercial business, in case of restaurants, with the associated parking lot in this example, or it's a tear down and you rebuild a new commercial structure on the lot too. That's what this could signify with the appropriate parking for it. And then I got one more, right? So the very last one is this idea again of having 2 buildings on one lot. So I think you know if someone's going to go on.
Call it the Tully lot, yeah.
We'll call it the Tully.
What do you think I stayed on that one?
Even I'm.
I think we put a no on that for. So that's the idea on this one. Is so we have another set of comments. We haven't really talked about the uses. We started a little bit here on what could fit with the home occupation. With an expansion of it, this would also be an opportunity going through, is it appropriate to have any of these scenarios, and then that use discussion would be helpful too to start that. So, not currently allowed anywhere in town.
Can I channel Greg on this one?
Yeah. Go for it.
I don't like any of them.
I almost put that down before we decided.
So those are no, though, right? That's a yes. That's a no, right?
No, there should be no line.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Just no and no line.
Get off the starting line.
Poor Enza.
P is,
Leave her alone.
P is the only one that I'm interested probably in having more conversation about, potentially.
Oh, nice.
Now it's clear.
Okay.
Me.
Feels like Family Feud. I'll make the sound if we need to.
Anna?
No, yeah, but that's not Chris, that's Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
you
fine.
can, yeah, you can pretty much, we're interchangeable, I guess.
Whatever Mike says, I'll go with.
We're gonna be living next to each
You're
other.
right. Well, I have a great place to get our home decor. It's called the Fieldman's Finer Things.
It's a good thing.
Coming soon, Ogden Avenue.
You think the same thing, Commissioner Goulartin?
No,
No, okay.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't think I'm interested in P, O, P, or Q. I might be open to M and N. I sort of feel like this is where I feel like the owner residing there might be important to me, and just a different type of business. But I don't know if I'm then just cross-contaminating, or that's the right word. To me, I think it's more of just expanding a bit into retail, but in a more controlled way, and I would like to see the person who is running the commercial business living there.
And that would be.
So that would make home occupation.
No, but the difference is, I think it's, that's why I'm not.
More than one employee.
More one employee.
More than one employee, not a service-based business, like
Bigger area of the business.
Okay.
potentially a bigger area.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm, but to me, I feel like it needs to be, the person who owns that business needs to live there.
Got it.
So I get why that's home occupation, but that's what I meant earlier about home occupation. To me is more, feels more service.
Yep.
But I don't know if we're talking about the same area, how you distinguish between those two.
Yeah.
Admittedly, home occupation is a 1980s zoning ordinance sort of basis point. It's certainly changed a lot over the years, right?
And we'll also present, from a building standpoint, fire separation requirements and things like that, too.
Yeah.
That don't come into play as much when we're talking about keeping it residential.
Oh, wow, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Becomes a multi.
You just have to sprinkle that out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think I marked me down as in the same vein as Chris on this. For me, when I was talking in a previous discussion about expanded potential uses, it was still driven by this owner. Owner not, decidedly has to be the owner involved. So whether that becomes, as Chris said, home occupation with different definitions, I don't have a lot of interest in the idea of somebody just creating part of their lot part of what they own to be used by somebody else commercially.
Yeah.
So I'm the homeowner, I live here, and I'll operate in whatever the business is that we decide.
To the point for tonight of wanting to learn more about what that might look like in terms of zoning and use definitions and restrictive definitions and things, yes.
Okay.
So that feels to me like more of JK or L on steroids. Because M, N, and O feel to me like F, G, and H over here.
Sure.
Because you've got divided ownership. So I'm actually going to surprise Martin a little bit. You can put X's all the way across except for possibly P. And the reason behind that is if it were still a structure that looked like a home, as long as it's one of the current home occupations, I think the ownership of it is less important. To me, it's more about the use. But if it were what's been discussed as the more expanded definition, I'm out.
I would consider M and N as well, and actually for a similar reason that it's still, you still have the owner there who is living there, and it still does look like a home. You know, again, it's going to hugely depend on what we talk about with regard to occupations and, you know, fire safety code and all of that for M, especially because they are connected. But I'm not necessarily interested in kind of changing a residential house to commercial. You know, at that point, you kind of lose that home feel and somebody who is owning the home, living there, and having kind of a piece of whatever it is. So, yeah, I'm kind of a similar mindset of Mayor Barnett and Commissioner Gilmartin
Just
on
to
this one.
reiterate that again, this will be a business
Correct.
operated by the household.
Correct.
or
Yeah,
the
yeah,
resident.
right.
Okay.
I'm also not interested in any of them. I guess I would be open to what Mayor Barnett was saying with opening it up to to additional businesses and additional employees
So more than one
outside.
employee.
Yeah. Expanding
An owner.
on K, yeah.
I think it's all going to come out in the wash of our discussion of owner occupation.
That's what I was think-
That's
what
really
I'm
what
thinking, too.
that's really what
Right, it might
everybody's
just
talking
be
about.
changing that
That's what I-
definition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the reason I don't like M is because I view it as somebody who has leased the space to somebody else.
Yeah,
There is
right,
no owner
right.
involved.
That's how I see it too.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not,
That was our intent of the concept, to get that feedback.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I get it here, it's different, right, home occupation, so, you know, I'm interested in having conversations about that home occupation, and expanding the definition of that, and even how many employees you might have, right?
Right, I'd rather talk about
But
that.
to go, yeah, it seems kind of weird.
Yeah.
So that's going to require some prep from everybody and some prep from staff. We probably got to spend a fair amount of time on that.
Yeah.
So actually, that's a great segue. Wow, this is exactly the kind of conversation we were looking for. We got great direction here tonight, and part of that direction is to really dive in further on the home occupation side. So on our next discussion, we will have definitely a discussion on that. And I also think I would like to start presenting the framework in its entirety, just so you can see how that's shaping up, so you can did we capture your vision of what Fairview might look like as we move to doing some zoning work. So that's all we had planned to present tonight. A keen observer of the materials, you will see that we put a couple slides in there that were answers to a council member's question that came in after the last meeting. So if that council member wants to start a conversation, or any council member wants to start a conversation about density and open space as it relates to downtown for comparison, we're ready to do that.
That council member. So I have to confess, this was not intended necessarily for anything more than exactly what it is, additional information for people to put some more context around the area. We have had a lot of commentary about like downtown but different. As we try and go forward, a lot of interest in what, if we say we want a lot of open space, what's a lot, right? I don't know either. So I just asked for some additional kind of data for people to reflect on a little bit. That's all this is. I hope it's helpful. If it's not, it helps me a little bit. But I thought it was good. I think all of us hopes that 25 years from now, Fairview is as vibrant and bustling as downtown is. But I think we all have slightly adjusted compared to downtown versions of what that looks like. So I don't know how you put that into ordinance, but hopefully this helps us talk about it. That's the point here.
I mean, I feel like this helped, especially when we were talking about Fairview One, about those opportunities for, activated open spaces. This kind of gave us a little bit of rationale as to why we might want to do so. I know it helped me kind of see how little there was there and kind of think about all of the opportunities that we could do that in a smart way and in a useful way for the community.
I would just add, thank you for this process.
Yeah.
Very,
was awesome.
very straightforward, made it
Yeah.
very easy for us to have this kind of discussion, so really great job.
Yeah,
A
this
lot
was
of variations, hard to do this, and this was very
Incredibly
efficient.
helpful.
and-
Yeah, it was incredibly efficient.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. So nicely done.
We have some visitors. You guys want to add some comments for us to take away as we leave tonight?
Well, certainly, I'm hoping, in this new adventure we're taking with the Fairview, I'd certainly encourage more open space, more greenery, so we don't have just a block and block of brick and mortar. I think it'd certainly be more shoppable, certainly more, would hopefully attract people. And it'd be a little different than what most of the towns are around here. I think it would, hopefully it'd be a reason to come to Downers Grove. I was a little unsettled by this accessory dwelling units. If it's a section, an area that's going to allow these, but as long as they're not spot located, like in the middle of residential, there seems to be a lot of shades to residential. I personally, if I were a homeowner, I wouldn't want any of these next door to me. If I'm going to live in residence, I want it to be residence. No businesses. If there's an area that allows them, but, don't start plopping these and, scattering them around. I wouldn't want it. And the potential for abuse on this is, let's face it, people will do what they can get away with. It's a fact. If I can stretch it and give you a little more than what's allowed, I'm going to do it, And it's just the way people are. I live over near, I'm at Lawrence and Lawrence, what am I talking about? Downers and Saratoga, where I came from. But anyway, I'm close to Forest and Fairview. And that corner on Forest, on the east side, south of Fairview, and I don't know how it was ever allowed, but it's there. There is three or four, which were originally homes, two-story houses. All that is now is blacktop. It's all blacktop. There's no grass. It's one.
Yeah, could you orient this again?
Let me think. It's
Forest and Franklin.
Forest and Franklin.
Forest and
Yeah.
Franklin.
Okay.
But I don't know, I would hate to see that show up again anywhere. I don't know how it was allowed to begin with. It was obviously private homes at one time. It's all blacktop, connecting all these homes. There's no grass. How they got through push, I don't want to see that kind of thing happen with this kind of concept. And just, to me, then again, if you're having two buildings on there, there's no way to really limit how many people are going to actually be living in there. You could have a family of 4 in one and a family of 6 in the other one, for all you know. And then where are those people going? Where do they park? Are they going to blacktop the backyard so they have parking for everybody that lives there? Just the potential for abuse of these things, it just sounds like it's very, very possible. But anyway, that's the way I would look. I wouldn't want to live near any of these, just not next to me.
Others?
Well, I will, but.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I was going to be in the main meeting, but boy, that was the place to be and not talk about this. And I was encouraged initially that y'all hadn't totally, completely lost your senses this evening. I mean, I thought there was hope. But I agree with this gentleman. Parking, you don't talk about when you let garages become businesses, where are people going to park? Are they going to pave their front yards so people can park? And The, well, and another point is, in terms of your engagement with the public, this lady lives in the area, has not ever known about this, until tonight. You haven't?
That's a little on me, though.
Well, not so much, not so much. Y'all have not engaged the public. What do people in this area want? Have you asked them? Do you know what they want? I don't think you probably don't. And I'm trying not to get agitated, but parking is an issue. The public input is an issue. And I gotta tell you, the idea of being experiential is, makes me nuts. I mean, you should not be experimenting anywhere. You should be 10 steps behind the leading edge. Let somebody else decide what doesn't work. Let them spend their money determining what doesn't work. And if you want to spend your own money on your own property to make experimental things, fine, but don't do it with taxpayer money. You should be fine. Can you give us an example of some area where all of this has been implemented and has been embraced by the community, where people want it? I don't think it's helpful to have questions about things that cannot be undone easily or cheaply, and whether you go full bore ahead into things that cannot be undone. There's already one example that y'all know that I don't think that Washington Avenue works very well, that can't be undone. So you're moving too fast and too, I don't know, just cavalier about how these things are going to affect the character and the feeling and the ambience of Downers Grove. And Chris, I'm going to pick on you. I look out my window in my kitchen and I can see in your garage. I do not want to see your clients coming in. I don't want to see your business. I want to see your mother-in-law, okay. But the idea of having these places pop up, and the mayor had said, the same thing that this gentleman alluded to, was the expectations of you buy a house and you want to live in a neighborhood. And having all these jumble of things going on as a surprise after you've made your huge investment in your home is just not fair and not right, in my opinion. So I come in always trying to think I'm going to be calm about this, and y'all say, I call it stupid stuff, that you just say things that make no sense to me. And it is Pandora's box, and you are opening it up to anywhere else in the community. If they can do it over there, we want to be able to do it here. And there's a whole difference between your office in your home, where you go out after dinner to get ready for the next day for your job, and I do for my clients, and having a traffic pattern that comes in and people coming in and going out and turning it into a jumble of different kinds of uses. So I don't like it. I guess that's what it comes down to. You're probably all going to do what you want to do, because I really don't think that these kinds of comments are seeming to have much of an impact. But I think that you ought to be able to provide, and maybe you can, a neighborhood that we can drive through and see what this is going to end up looking like, and where it has worked well. Because I don't, is there some place where you have found that this works well and is well received? I'm just curious about that. So again, forgive me for being agitated. I try my best. Thank you.
Well, I don't know where the apartments are, and again, this is my first time hearing about this, so I probably wouldn't want a whole bunch of apartments unless the parking could be, well, so I live by Fairview and 4th, so I'm over by Little Presbyterian Church, just south of the tracks there. And, I'm thinking of the gas station that used to be on the corner by the White Hen. It was an old finally the family couldn't take it anymore, and I kept thinking, oh, well, maybe it would be nice to have like a little coffee shop or something small, not a drive-through or anything. I don't want to, do that, but something like a bagel shop or something would have been nice and sort of open to, like you say, a little. I don't know how you control the parameters of that, but then we got a giant apartment building, which, I don't really know. Like, I think the parking is contained. It's fine, but I am concerned because of the train, and just trying to get across the track sometimes is kind of hard. But overall, I have no problems with the apartment building that went up there instead. My only thing I wish, and I know it's probably not within your parameters to help out with, but the speedway on the south, of course. The parking lot is like, I don't even go there anymore. I just can't take it because that parking lot is just like, I feel like I'm gonna just. Can we ask them to please, like, what is the deal with that? Like in the snow, and they're like, I just take my business elsewhere. So anyway, I am curious to look more into it, but I don't know. I'm just curious. It's a lot. I had no idea what was going on. And actually, see where the yellow on the bottom? Okay, so how does if the yellow and the green overlap? Is it a 1 or is it a 2? What is that?
We don't really know the answer.
Okay.
Part of what we're doing here is trying to have discussions that lead us to considering change in zoning, and we're not there. And what you heard tonight was just a lot of open thoughts, and we're going to learn some more about each of these things.
Very interesting. It really made sense.
We're going to explain shortly here steps.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
Sophie?
Yeah, please.
Comprehensive plan is a document that helps guide decision-making. This council said that the 2017 comprehensive plan recommendations for Fairview is going to be guiding this discussion. That's been decided. So the comprehensive plan is done. Council said that's the basis. Let's try to implement those recommendations. We are ultimately working towards creating a new set of rules and regulations that apply to the Fairview area, which eventually will be very specific zoning districts so that we know overlap in the concept. This is zoned X, this is zoned Y, with its own set of very specific rules. But it's such a big leap to go from high-level policy to very specific law that we put in the middle of this conceptual discussion that the mayor was talking about. Let's put concepts on the table, let's have a dialogue, let's see which concepts remain throughout the discussion as we get lower and lower in our trajectory and more detail. This is, I would call this public engagement by folks who are following and want to come join us. Once we move from the framework, once the council says these are the concepts that are important to us, and we go into a rezoning, this is heavy public engagement. This is notices to the residents. This is neighborhood meetings. This is all sorts of stuff. That's once the regulatory framework has been established and we propose a set of zoning rules. So this is just concepts. We'll get more specific as we go.
Yeah, importantly, we always wish more people were following along. We don't know the right way to necessarily do that. We're thrilled you guys are here. But importantly, that 2017 comprehensive plan was not 7 people in a room for 2 nights. That was an entire process that had a lot of public involvement. It had, I think, an ad hoc committee created for it. So what we're trying to do now is figure out what implementation that looks like. But that process that got to the idea of what should Fairview aspire to, for lack of a better term, was a very lengthy public engagement process. It's also available. If you can't sleep some night, go to our website and read through it. It's all available there. It's a little dry at this point because it is kind of conceptual, but it's worth reading. And it is. It's what's driving a lot of the thoughts that are going on right now. Chris?
Yeah. One of the things, based on one of the comments that were made, can you tell us? We've been kind of conceptualizing these as, I think, single-family homes and what can be done with those single-family homes. Can we talk about, or can you give us the number based on the yellow cloud of how many single-family homes we're actually talking about?
Yes.
Because when I look at that thing, it doesn't seem like there's a ton in there.
It's just a handful. So at our I think it was our second meeting before we had a map.
I think I was gone, I apologize.
Well, yeah, we can give that,
Okay.
we'll give that as a resource to everybody.
Is it 20? Is it 50? I bet it's not 50. I bet it's 20. So
It's a short list.
another thing as we think about this,
Great point.
friend, we're talking about a very small subset,
Once you tear down, it's enough to review.
but there's only a certain number that could. We'll talk more in my backyard when it's warmer.
Or from her window.
Yeah.
But close your drinks first. Close your drinks first.
He has a window in his garage.
I do.
TMI, Janet.
I do. I'm gonna have my mother-in-law, she's just gonna stand in the window and stare out at you, Janet. I'm gonna have my mother-in-law come in that window and stare out at you.
I love your mother.
She's great. I do too. I do. She's great.
And that's
a
in the
public
minutes.
record.
That's in the minutes,
That is in
though.
the minutes. Exactly.
You love your girls.
Yeah, yes, he does. Yes, he does.
All right, anybody, how about a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all and good night.